what I used to always get hung up on was, well, I did all the things. I got all the grades. I didn't drink. I did all this stuff. I excelled in school. I went to this like really elite college and I did all this stuff. And I'm miserable. And things aren't happening for me. And why? I just felt cheated. Like, wait a minute. I play by the rules and here I am. Like, what the hell, you know?
Well, and I think that is exactly what happens to women in midlife also. I've done what I was supposed to do. I got the education. I married the good guy. I had, 2 kids. I had the white picket fence. I had the job. I was still incredibly unhappy. And honestly, I had so much shame around that. From the outside looking in, my life looked so fantastic. And it was in a lot of ways, but I was still incredibly unhappy. This good girl conditioning affects us in so many ways like we don't even recognize. Welcome to Drinks with the Girls. Conversations for women over 40 around connection, change, and the power of female friendship. Living well with stories to tell. I'm Karen, and this is Lisa.
We are moms and solopreneurs stepping into our own, diving into real conversations about things that matter to women in midlife.
We're here to spill the tea on everything that affects women in their 40s and beyond. Topics like loss and grief, changing relationships, launching kids, menopause, and reinventing ourselves in midlife. We are here to tackle it all.
Connect with us through a blend of our lived experiences, our friendship, the memory of our moms, plus a collection of real stories, honest conversations, and engaging interviews that will make women over 40 feel seen and remind them that they're not alone on this journey called life. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to Drinks with the Girls. I'm Lisa.
And I am Karen, and today we are clinking glasses to the death of the good girl.
Bum, bum, bum.
But we are here for the rebirth of bold, unapologetic midlife women who have freaking had enough.
We are getting into it today. Like, we don't always get into it because we haven't done that in the other 40 plus episodes we've done. Oh my God, 40 episodes. That's crazy. So this conversation was inspired by a blog post that Karen wrote called The Good Girl Myth, Why Midlife Women Are No Longer Buying It. We'll link that in the show notes. She lit a fire on this one. And this is actually a topic that she and I have talked about like at various times. And I love that she wrote that post. We're like, this is crying for an episode. So here we are.
I think we drop little, tidbits in our episodes about our good girl conditioning, but I think this is great because we can really just like dive in.
Yeah.
It's something that is just always simmering under the surface with me because honestly, every woman that I work with, we have to unhook from this conditioning because we've all been trained to be quote unquote good. And what it means is quiet, selfless, agreeable, low maintenance. And what does that equal to? Exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot today and just kind of thinking about my childhood and different kinds of things and just, where this all comes from. So this should be a super, super duper juicy one, but we should probably tell you what we're drinking first. So I am double fisting today because it's been that kind of day. So I've got a Coke Zero in the right hand and in the left hand, I have another Recess. So this is Recess Mood Lime Citrus. Magnesium and adaptogen infused sparkling water. Calm, cool, and collected. Life goals.
I'm so curious about your choice. So is the Recess supposed to counteract?
Okay, so you're assuming that I had a plan for this. Okay, there was no plan. Okay, so the Recess came from when I went to the bougie market because I was all wigged out about I gotta up my game because Karen's got all this fun stuff. The Coke Zero came because it was free when I had an appointment today and I was dragging tail and I was like, oh, I need to perk up a little bit. And I assumed that I would down it over a couple of hours and then my day went to shizzle. We're trying to improve our language. We'll discuss that in a minute. But so it just never got finished. So I was like, well, I'm not going to let a good Coke Zero go to waste for God's sake. I can't. So probably the planning of that was not the best. And I probably shouldn't have a lot of caffeine, but I also have a business trip that I got to stay till early to pack for tonight, so I might need to stay up. Anywho, there was no plan involved. Is the long story with the short topic.
Got it. So I am drinking a non-alcoholic seltzer, Polar seltzer, and it's cranberry lime.
Yeah,
I have it in my like sippy cup thing, and it's drinking a seltzer through a straw is a different experience.
Otherwise known as a tumbler for those of us that aren't 2 years old. Oh my God, it's an adult sippy cup. So okay, we need to put that in our merch list, right? So we talk about having merch at some point. Although, hot off the presses, y'all know that our 1-year anniversary of being on the air is coming up, and we are pretty like 90% sure we're going to have some kind of merch involved with that. So stay tuned for that. We're trying to figure out what we want to do, but yeah, maybe someday when we're big and huge and grown, we'll have like a merch store, and you can get a Drinks with the Girls tumbler / sippy cup. Holy Lord.
All right, the grandkids were here over the weekend. Come on.
Oh, it's all good. Okay. All right. So, for anyone who is hearing the term good girl myth for the first time, what in the hot tub are we talking about here?
So we've all heard, the good girl conditioning and that, or most of us have. Some of us have. Let's just say that. But the first time I heard the good girl myth, it was from author Maho Molfino. She wrote a book called Break the Good Girl Myth: How to Dismantle Outdated Rules, Unleash Your Power, and Design a More Purposeful Life. And she really outlines 5 myths that women are conditioned to believe. Things like always having to be nice, avoiding conflict, putting others first. And she talks about how those myths affect our relationships, our careers, and ultimately shape our behavior and keep us from fully speaking our truth, living authentically, and just really reclaiming our power.
Yeah. That programming is so ingrained. And I mean, we've talked about this before with our moms. Like, there was so much of this that was just there. Like, I don't even think they chose it, that it just was there. I mean, I know in my mom's case, she came from a really just horribly messed up, divorced home family. My grandparents, I loved them dearly, but they were not good with each other and throwing crockery and screaming and yelling and all of that. And so she basically went into bunker mode. And I think that's what drove a lot of her behavior. One of the things that kind of she tried to instill in me. So I was raised a Christian Zionist, for those of you that know what that is, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. But I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't have sex till I was in my 20s. And that was kind of all part of that. And it wasn't like she told me to do all these things, but that was kind of what was part of growing up in that church. And not to say that people that choose to do that are bad in some kind of way, but I think for me, what it set up was this dynamic where I felt like I was ticking those boxes, and therefore, because I was ticking those boxes, life would be good because I was being good, if that makes sense. And in my pretty little simplistic head, that was the idea. And needless to say, it didn't work out that way.
Well, I definitely want to talk about that. It's like the idea of the good girl versus, what's the opposite, the bad girl. And whether we're a child or a woman, being a bad girl, air quotes, is, like the worst thing you could be, because we are not taught that our value is in, like you said, our sexuality, or, raising our voice, having an opinion, having feelings like maybe anger or frustration, right? We are raised to kind of be in this little box.
And in my mind, like, this is where my mind goes as she's saying this. I'm like listing the plot of Grease in my head, right? Because if that isn't a metaphor, I don't know what is, right? Like, how does it wrap up? Sandy becomes a total slut and gets the man of her dreams.
You have Sandy versus Rizzo. Right? I mean, like, that's such a good point, because those are the epitome of the good girl versus the bad girl. And, look at how trashed Rizzo got when she thought she was pregnant. And, we internalize all this stuff. It has a stranglehold on us. And we do a really good job when we're in our, teens and 20s and 30s even, making sure that, like you said, you're ticking the boxes. You are making sure that you are, doing what society wants us to do. And then the beautiful part about getting to midlife, our 40s, our 50s, beyond, is that we give less forks, right? And we really start to examine, how has this conditioning kept me small? How have I not been able to truly step into who I want to be or who I was destined to be, because I'm always trying to make sure that I'm a quote unquote good girl. And I think, it's so hard. And that's why I have to work with women, when they come to coach with me, because there's no way you can create your best life if you are still living by that conditioning.
Yeah. And I think, to take it a step further, what happens is it's not just like, oh, we have to live by these rules. But then unfortunately, what creeps in a not so subtle way is everyone else's needs and not ours. And that is the kind of yardstick with which everything is judged. And that ends up a lot of times just being a mom, right? You're a good mom if you put everybody's needs before your own. And some of that, like, you have a new baby, you don't have much of a choice in that particular situation, but you just never are able to kind of unplug from that. And,
well, because there's a lot of internal guilt and shame that goes along with it. Yep. It's not only like, what are other people going to say? It's ourselves feeling like we're not allowed yeah. to have our own needs and wants. And yeah, we're not talking about, letting our 2-year-olds or 10-year-olds fend for themselves. Yeah.
Range free, little ones.
Good luck. I'll see you in 2 days.
Yeah. And I think, we're not going to dive into marriage on this episode. We did an episode about divorce and marriage and dating, and not that that's the be all and end all, but I think for purposes of this discussion, we're kind of a spouse free zone here, because I think that kind of goes down a rabbit hole we're not necessarily focusing on. But I think for me, what I used to always get hung up on was, well, I did all the things. I got all the grades. I didn't drink. I did all this stuff. I excelled in school. I went to this like really elite college and I did all this stuff. And I'm miserable and things aren't happening for me. And why? And so for me, it was kind of this like, I just felt cheated. Like, wait a minute. I played by the rules and here I am. Like, what the hell,
Well, and I think that is exactly what happens to women are in midlife also. It's like, I've done what I was supposed to do. I got the education. I married the good guy. I had, 2 kids. I had the white picket fence. I had the job. And then it's like, I was still incredibly unhappy.
Yep.
So there, and honestly, I had so much shame around that. Just so much shame around, look at, from the outside looking in, my life looked so fantastic. And it was in a lot of ways, but I was still incredibly unhappy. And being able to really look at that for myself and not beat myself up about it, and realize that, what, I am worthy of feeling good in my relationships, all of them, especially my marriage.
Yeah.
So I just think this good girl conditioning affects us in so many ways, like we don't even recognize. My name is Karen Shatafian, and I am a shameless coffee addict and empowerment coach for women, and my love language is authenticity. My mission is helping women unapologetically design a life they're in love with. Because what the hell are we waiting for? My website, KarenShatafian.com, has all my coaching packages and free offers, like my Midlife Reclamation Guide. In it, you'll find tools to help you decide how to create the most inspired and empowered version of yourself and your life. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram talking about ways women can show up for themselves after decades of showing up for everyone else. Join me as we throw off the shackles and live our best freaking lives. See the show notes for all the details. Cheers.
Sometimes it's really interesting because I catch myself thinking, oh, I've gone the other way, right? Like I'm too much or too out there. And, without getting into my family dynamics, that's always been a thing. right? Especially with my brother and my dad, that like, oh, she's the emotional one. She's the drama queen. She's this, she's that, right? And it irritates the living fork out of me because, again, it just feels very female and diminishing in a lot of ways, right? I can't help but think that if I was a guy, that family members would not be saying that about me. And I find it really frustrating because the male members of my immediate family, not talking about my husband, tend to really shove me in that box pretty quickly when they think I'm, quote unquote, getting too emotional. And it infuriates me.
Absolutely. And that's absolutely part of that good girl conditioning. We're not allowed to be too much anything,
Yep.
too emotional, too loud, too boisterous. We're not allowed to have a big funny laugh. What happens is, and this is what I see in my clients is, not that we've been pretending, but we've really been keeping our authentic selves in the dark. Yeah. And now that we reach our 40s and 50s, and she's like, let me the fork out of here, and we want her to come out because we want to step into those shoes. Yeah. But we have to let go of, we have to be okay being too much with that big laugh or being sexual, And
I think your priorities just change, right? And I do think there's a certain amount of, well, what is this getting me, right? Whether or not like you end up divorcing or like to me that's kind of irrelevant in this situation. It's really about like there just seems to be this Faustian bargain that society tells us we need to make, right? And that shows up in different ways. Like in your particular case, it really showed up in your marriage, right? In my particular case, it shows up a lot with my, family of origin. But I think the reckoning comes no matter what. And I don't know too many of my friends and contemporaries that on some level have been able to escape that.
No, it takes a chiseled ton of forking courage and the willingness to be really honest and transparent with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, so many women settle and so many women are unhappy, and because it's too hard to look at it. I mean, believe me, it is hard, and no shade at all, because everybody has to walk their own path, but it is painful. It is painful to live a life that you don't feel like you can truly be 100% you. And if we are still subscribing to that good girl myth, the good girl conditioning, we are not able to truly be who we are. And it's hard. It hurts.
I don't know if this happened to you after your mom passed, but I went through this long period after my mom passed of really kind of rediscovering my relationship with her and kind of what that looked like or what that had looked like. And I had to work through a lot of anger that I didn't even know that I even had in the first place. And I think while my mom was alive, everybody used to joke about Saint Renee. And I really had to do a lot of work in therapy to kind of work through a lot of those resentments. And I'm kind of doing it in a different way with my dad. So I don't know. I mean, did you have that experience? What was that like for you?
My mom died when I was 26. So she's on a pedestal, basically.
Yeah, it's Princess Diana dying young kind of a thing.
For sure. Yes. And she was not perfect by any means. She was a very great mom. Like, she was a very encouraging, loving, empowering mom to me and both of my sibling, all of us. So I didn't have a lot of work to do in therapy around my relationship with her, but how to live my life without her. Now, my dad, that's kind of a different story.
Yeah.
It's hard because, our parents were conditioned a certain way.
Oh,
we were
100%.
It was like when my stepmom, she had a debilitating stroke several years ago. And my dad, I remember hearing him on the phone, who was talking to a friend, and he just said, "Thank God I have daughters." because in his mind, it was our job to come in and take care of all the things while he sat in his recliner and did his Sudoku puzzles. And dealing with the resentment I had around that and still do, we don't know that we're being kind of manipulated in this way when we're young, because it's just, everybody does the best they can, right? Our parents were doing the best they could with what they had.
I heard somebody say the other day, and I thought this was such a great way to put it. Everybody is just doing the best that they can with the skills that they have at that moment. And it's that skills part that I think really, really just kind of, I don't know, zhuzhes that up, for lack of a better word, because it's true. I mean, I feel like if you just say, oh, everybody's just doing the best they can, like the responsibility part isn't there. And that's one of the big issues that I have with my dad, is it's like everybody else's problem, right? Like I can't help it, throw my hands up, right? Which just irritates the living fork out of me. But this idea of you have a limited skill base implies malleability. Like you can get more skills, right? If you choose not to, that's on you, but you can get more skills, right? And I mean, I should make it clear, like I had a great childhood and my mom was a great mom. I think for me, what came out of her passing when she did was just a lot of really complex feelings and emotions around the fact that she really did have very rigid expectations and morals and kind of ideas of what was right, and didn't really have a lot of flexibility where I was concerned. And so a lot of my views of what was right, what was wrong, what I should do, what I shouldn't do came out of that. So I think for me, that's where the anger and resentment came from, is that, like I've told this story on the podcast before, when she came to see me teach and she just was talking about my appearance, right? And so, you know, I look around and so many of those things that were priorities for her, it's like, why? You know, so just reconciling that. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent, but it's not that my mom wasn't a good mom, you know?
No, your mom, I have your mom on a pedestal too. But
okay, so I'm not crazy.
I didn't live with her.
And she was all of those things for sure. I mean, she was an amazing person to a lot of people. And she definitely put her money where her mouth was. She was not going around telling everybody to do stuff that she wouldn't do, right? She really walked the walk. She didn't just talk the talk. So there's that whole piece, but obviously it gets more complicated being her daughter.
What was coming up for me is, you know, I think a lot of the things you were talking about has to do with growing up in certain religions.
100%. 100%.
I think that is, like, I want to say a straitjacket. Like that's what's coming to my mind. And I don't know, because I didn't grow up in a super religious household, even though my grandfather was a Baptist minister. Go figure. But I just think when you have the added layer of the religious, you know, expectations, I think that adds a whole other level.
Yeah. You know, and again, like we're not trying to trash religion here. You know, I was pretty involved in the Episcopalian church for a long time. That's a whole other story to tell. But like what keeps coming up for me is, and Karen knows this, right? So I would go to horse shows, and horse shows are typically on a Sunday, right? And it was always this big freaking battle, because horse shows start at 8 a.m. and your first class is a warm-up class. And all these great classes that I wanted to show my horse in were right in the morning. And what did I have to do? I got my horse there at the crack of dawn, and then she picked me up and I had to go to church. And I was all dressed up in my show uniform and with my breeches and my boots, and everybody just thought it was so cute and cool. And I was just sitting there seething the whole time going, I could be in 3 different classes right now. This is super, super frustrating. And it just took years of me telling her, you know, this is not fair. Like, this is not okay. I'm not saying I won't go to church, but like, give me a break. And she finally relented towards the end, but it just seemed like there was a statement that was being made. You know what I mean? Like, I had to look nice, but I was I mean, who wears breeches and boots and a freaking hunt coat to church, for God's sakes? It was just very like, yeah, like stigmatizing, you know, like, oh, look, I dragged her out of the stable and here she goes. She's polished up and now she's at church. It was bizarre.
So many visuals are coming to my mind.
Right? Right?
I think it just is such a difficulty also because, yes, religion definitely has its place. And I think it's hard, and especially for girls and women to grow up with such rigid expectations. And then because, and not that that's necessarily a bad thing, you know, like not that, you know, not having sex until you're married is a bad thing, or not drinking is a bad thing. I'm not saying that. But when you get to a certain point and like, let's say, you know, you want to have a drink, or let's say, you know, you're an adult, you have sexual urges, or you want to do something that is a traditionally, maybe a male has a, you know, characteristic or something, you feel bad. You feel like you're doing something wrong. And so like when women get to their 40s and 50s, when they want to start prioritizing themselves, when they want to start speaking up to the people in their life, when they want to start setting boundaries, when they want to start saying no to things that just suck the life out of them, they feel like they're doing something wrong. Yeah. And that doesn't have anything to do with religion. That has to do with the good girl conditioning.
Yeah. I think it's two separate topics.
Yes, two separate topics, but the same dynamic to an extent.
I think that homes where you grow up with religion, it's amplified in a lot of ways. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds because this is not an episode about religion bashing. Neither one of us feels that way. No. It just happened to be my reality and my questioning of choices.
Yeah, and I think it's about, you know, shrinking. You know, the good girl conditioning forces us to shrink, you know, even when we get to a point in our life where we're ready to just freaking expand. We're dying to just, you know, be the most expansive version of ourselves. Yeah. And we just have these tapes in our brain that are telling us, you know, this is wrong. You shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't want that. You know, you shouldn't want more. You know, like when I was married and, you know, I had this little voice in my head that was telling me, you know, you should be grateful. Your life is incredible. You shouldn't want more. You know, look at all you have. And then I had to really just get honest with myself and just decide, you know what? I'm worthy of more. I'm worthy of every freaking thing I desire.
Yep.
And whether or not I can have it and get it and make it happen is another thing, but I'm worthy.
Yeah. And I think that's where just the real down low of this is. Choices are one thing. If you decide not to drink, we did a whole episode on alcohol recently and making that choice or not making that choice, right? If you decide not to have sex until you're married, like all those things are perfectly valid choices, right? That you can make, and everybody has the right to make those. I think where it all goes awry is feeling like a failure if you raise your voice or if you disagree. That's where I think the wheels start coming off. And I mean, even today, right? Like I hear all the dang time from women in business that have successful careers, like Brooke Shields talked about it in her book when we did the episode on that, of this idea of you can't truly authentically be in your power because it freaks people out, men. And this idea that if you are, like she talks about in the book when she's talking about the section about when she started her company and they're going out to find funding. And this idea of learning that the best way to get through to some of these male investors was to let them kind of, quote unquote, give her advice. Even though she wasn't seeking advice, she was seeking funding. And the line is something to the effect of, you know, I learned that I had to let them feel like they were giving me advice. And I could usually tell when I walked in the room whether or not we were going to get funding. But the way to kind of do it was to make them think it was their idea, right? Which just sticks in my craw. I have such a hard time with that. I've had a beloved boss be like, text me, hey, get back. Back it up. Don't do it. I know you want to say it, right? And it just irritates me because I just wonder if men are getting those texts too. Just saying.
Oh, for sure not.
Okay, quick pause. Have we talked about the Pod Squad lately?
Oh, the Pod Squad. You mean our email list /VIP lounge /digital wine club?
Exactly. So listeners, if you're not on it yet, you're basically making life harder for yourself when it comes to podcasts.
Like trying to scroll for show notes while speed walking on a treadmill. Wait, what was that link again? Oh, no. Grab the side rails.
Or pulling up that book we mentioned while you're in the Starbucks line and then realizing everybody else moved up 3 cars and now you're that woman.
We've all been there. That's why we made the Pod Squad. You'll get new episode alerts every week with direct links. Easy to listen, easy to share.
And show notes straight to your inbox. So when we drop a life-changing product, book, hot tip, or yummy new drink, you're not rummaging through your memory like a woman searching for her reading glasses when they're on top of her head.
It's organized, it's helpful, it's for you, babes.
So join the Pod Squad. The link is in the show notes. Just tap it.
Snacks, sarcasm, solidarity.
And obviously, fighting the patriarchy.
We write at dawn.
One of the hard parts is it's freaking exhausting.
Yes, that.
And to try to feel like, you have to keep all these balls in the air. You have to keep doing all the things that you've learned that you're supposed to do. A good girl, a good wife, a good mom, a good employee, a good daughter. We have these ideas, and I will never forget the feelings when I thought I was letting my dad and my stepmom down.
Yep.
Like I had nothing else to give. I was, and listeners, those of you who have been in the caregiving roles for your parents, you know exactly what we're talking about. It's like I had nothing left to give, and I had to save myself and my mental health.
Yep.
And I had to pull back a little bit and set boundaries. And that was really, really difficult because I felt like I was being a bad daughter.
And we have been brewing on a caregiving episode for our beloved sandwich generation for a while. And so buckle up for this episode on caregiving. So without kind of previewing that too much and without really getting into just the nitty gritty of a personal situation I'm in right now, I am navigating the diagnosing of a pretty serious deal with my husband. And again, I don't want to get into the details of it, but it is really, for now, maybe someday, it has been just this endless freaking baton death march of just fighting for getting answers and being gaslit upon gaslit upon gaslit for the last 18 years. And Kara knows this. And just trying to speak up to providers that didn't want to pay attention to me, that thought I was being a Budinsky on the minor level and just an outright biatch on the major level, and just nasty, nasty stuff. I had one of his providers, when he was on a Zoom call, ask him if he was going to participate in the session or would he rather have the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain talk, meaning me.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. That one's still pretty fresh, right? And there were other gems from that particular individual. But just years and years and years and years and years of this, of people saying, well, aren't you going to speak up for yourself, right? And now we're finding in a lot of ways that he couldn't do that, right? So it really was up to me. And so I'm having to take a more forceful role. And it is obviously difficult to go through this with someone that you love, but it's even more difficult when people are putting all that crap on top of it, right? Like, I don't have the right to participate in this, and that it might be an issue with my husband's health, right? Like, I think it's the biggest cruel joke of all that someone with attention and cognitive issues has to remember to order their own medication. And then them gaslighting me and coming after me for being the one to follow up, right? What are you, his secretary? And it's like, you have no idea what you're dealing with. The people have just felt like they could be super, super nasty about it. And it was all because I wasn't being the good little dutiful wife that stood in the background and just let the big man handle it. Right? Like,
how many times are we as women, all of us, every single one of us, silenced? And how many times do we freaking bite our tongue because of what we want to say, but we don't, because exactly we don't want to come across as this biatch or this,
The Wizard of
woman
Oz.
that, oh,
Behind the curtain.
good grief.
Just this idea that because I was advocating that I was this just entitled, overwhelming person.
But the thing that stands out is like we've spent decades being silenced, either literally by other people, usually men, or by our own voice in our head that says,
yes,
don't be too much, don't say that. I'm the queen of overthinking. Like, I am a recovering overthinker. And because it's like, oh, well, if I say this, how is somebody going to feel? Or if I say that. And the beautiful thing about midlife is you get to this stage and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I am not doing this anymore. And I'm drawing a line in the sand. And it's just too much. It's too heavy. The people pleasing, the trying to, be the quote unquote good girl is too much.
I think one of the hardest things for me now, we've spoken a little bit about this, and I'm sure you felt this at some point with your daughter, but I can literally see the walls closing in around her. I can literally see this bright, vivacious, happy, like take no prisoners kid turning into this teenager that thinks about others' approval first. Now, her light hasn't totally been dimmed, and I'm grateful for that, but that is a huge part of how she makes decisions, and it makes me I could just cry. It's so frustrating. And it's like, how did we get to this place where our girls are just automatically falling in line like Handmaid's Tale? Here we go, right? What as a society are we doing that conditioning just clicks right into place between like 6th and 7th grade, and they're no longer just the bright, vivacious, happy, just fearless, courageous girls that they were. And it just breaks my heart.
Well, the messages come from everywhere. Mm-hmm. So even if we are raising them in our home, and we all have our own conditioning that we pass on to our daughters, even if we're conscious of it and we try not to, it's just how it works. Right. But I think even if in our home, we're trying really hard to raise empowered girls, the messages they receive from every other area of their life, we have to combat that as well. And it's sad.
Yeah. It's
fair and error.
Yeah, no, it is. And I don't know. And it's funny because my husband and I have had several conversations about this, because my husband is very supportive of women and very supportive of, I've told a few different stories before about that. And so, but every once in a while, he'll pop off with a comment and I just lose it. And he's always like Karen and I always joke about Tony and Martin when we do our Linda Blair impression. What did you just say? And it's like, no, run for the hills, right? No. So we are aware of this tendency that we have. However, one of the things that I've talked to him about that I'm really super clear is it's like my daughter is getting enough of these messages all around her. She doesn't need, whether that's intentional or not, to get those from you. She needs no help in that particular direction at all. And I always am like, we have to work triply hard to counteract that piece. And by the way, raise our sons to be conscious of that and to be allies, right? Like, yes, my son is cognitively impaired and yes, he is developmentally delayed, but I tell you what, he's not delayed about. We have conversations about all this all the time, and how you treat women and what it means when things happen that are not okay around women. And you ask him and he has a good understanding of that. As a mom of a son, I feel like I have a responsibility not to contribute to that cesspool as well.
Absolutely. Such a good point. Because that's the opposite end of the spectrum.
Hey there, I'm Lisa Corachella McDowell, your midlife Pacific Northwest princess, here to guide you in the art of next leveling your life. I'm passionate about women's health and wellness in midlife, especially for moms parenting kids with unique needs like I do. I truly believe we can learn, grow, advocate, and care for the planet while taking care of ourselves and our families. And I'd love to help you do the same. Plus, I'm beyond excited to announce the launch of my new membership, the Empowered Parent Collective, this March. It's a space for parents to confidently advocate for their kids, build inclusive communities, educate themselves, and find balance and support along the way. To find out more about the Empowered Parent Collective, my classes, wellness offerings, parenting tips, advocacy resources, and exclusive Drinks with the Girls goodies, head to nextlevellifewithlisa.com. Let's survive and thrive in the messy middle together. Cheers!
We need to simultaneously empower our girls, but also empower our boys. Like you said, help them be allies so they know, they're even aware of it.
Yeah.
So if we're ditching this whole good girl idea, if we're ready to, stop the people pleasing and to stop chasing this approval, stop trying to do it all, how do we do that? What comes next?
Well, and it's like, if you want to smoke and wear a tight black leather cat suit like Sandy at the end of Grease, you go with your bad self. There's degrees here, you know what I mean? And I just think that that's such kind of a metaphor for it, right? Like, you can't be one, you've got to choose one or the other. You don't have to like grab a pitchfork. You don't have to turn into like a 180 of yourself. It's just really about feeling free to be who you friggin' are, right?
Yeah. And trusting yourself. Trusting that you know what you want. Trusting that you know what's going to make you happy, or who you want to be, what you want to say. So I think self-trust has a lot to do with that also. Because it takes that to be able to listen to your own voice instead of listening to the voice of everybody around us.
And questioning yourself all the time.
Right, for sure.
I remember, I just got this flash, it would have been 10th high school reunion, 15th high school reunion, something like that. And I was in the bathroom with some friends, and one of the quote unquote popular girls said something, I don't know, somebody laughed too loud or something like that, and she just made some kind of snide Mean Girls comment. And I had a friend, and I will just remember this as long as I live, and she turned to her and said, "Oh, sweetie, I might have given a flying fork when I was 17, but I could give a flying fork right now. Out of my way." I was like, you were my freaking hero.
Let's all channel her.
Right? And that's another layer we haven't talked about. This idea of diminishing and demeaning other women to make yourself feel more important. The whole Mean Girls kind of queen bee kind of thing, right? We talked about that a little bit in the plastic surgery episode, but to me, that is the lowest of the low, is to pile on top of other women and put yourself above them to make a point. Not cool.
Yeah, not cool. So we've kind of been here, there, and everywhere on this episode, per usual.
I love our rabbit holes.
But listeners, it's important to us that you leave the episode feeling empowered and with a couple takeaways. So, Lisa, what do we want women to walk away from this episode with?
It's funny because I feel like we've been kind of on a kick in the last few episodes in some ways talking about this theme in different ways. And the episode we did with Ayurveda and Karen Baskett, she just talked about this idea of, with reference to menopause, women, just the filters were gone and being able to step forward into your power. And I think that's the bottom line is, as Karen says, stop waiting for the forking permission slip. Like, stop waiting to get the okay to be who you are, right? Stop beating yourself up with that inner voice and saying that you don't have the right to feel the way you feel or want what you want. And do what you need to do. Get into therapy, listen to a bunch of our episodes, like talk to a girlfriend, like whatever you need to give yourself that forking permission slip and the ability to sit with it and be freaking okay with yourself. Because if you keep yourself in that box, at a certain point, it isn't society that's doing it. It's you, girlfriend.
Mic drop. I like to tell my clients in my community, let's be the freaking bad girl. Like, let's turn this upside down. Let's be Sandy at the end of Grease in the freaking skin tight, black pants, catsuit situation. Thingy. Right. What could we do that really can turn this whole good girl myth on its ear? not doing something outside of your value system, obviously. But I just think it's fun to look at it that way and just kind of like play with it. It's like, well, what's the baddest thing you could do, and not hurt anybody you love or end up in jail?
I can tell you that 16-year-old me with the double D breasts and the ridiculous stuff that she had to deal with would have never in a million billion years gone to the grocery store without a bra. I do that all the time now. And let me tell you, it feels fabulous. And I don't care.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's why it's easier for us in our 50s to be able to talk about, doing things that people might not like. I've done so many things in the past 10 years that people did not like and were disappointed and had, some things to say. But it's like, I don't give a fork anymore. I just don't.
Yeah.
I'm here to live my life, live it fully, and still take care of my people, still loving my people, but it doesn't mean I have to sacrifice myself in the process.
Yeah, and that's the key, I think, is it's not about... And I think that's where I was kind of fumbling through that part when I was talking about my mom, is I just think for the longest time, I still was trying to seek her approval and falling short of that. And I think what I had to work through was this idea of I might want different things, and that's okay. It doesn't mean I don't love my mom or didn't love my mom or still do. It doesn't mean that I don't admire her and want to emulate certain aspects. It can be nuanced. It can be degrees of that. So if you want to embrace something, embrace it. It's that old, what other people think of me is none of my damn business. We are so worked up about what will people think. Like I said, I see that with my daughter who's, a freshman in high school, and I just want to shake her sometimes and be like, no one is going to care. I promise you. Right. But if I say that, like she can't take that in. So how do we support our girls to be more confident in their own skin? How do we support our sons to be people that are not demeaning women and are able to support?
I think we have to model that for our girls.
100%.
Because if we're saying, the things that are trying to empower her, but we are still not ourselves in our full power, it's going to land flat. And I think, that's probably why your son, is so aware about this, because you have the conversations and he watches you and Martin, how Martin is a feminist, right? And so what a better model for your son than a man who knows how to frickin' treat women.
100%. And it gets through, right? Like I'm trying to remember what triggered this, but I think I was trying to set up an IEP meeting for my son. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a certain thing that has to happen with special education. And there was some kind of complexity or something like that to it. And my daughter was like, oh, what's going on? I was like, oh, well, I'm just getting the runaround about this or something. She goes, oh, great. So let me guess, you're going to have to get on the phone and fight for what we need. And it was really interesting because it was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. And she was kind of play acting oh, it's so annoying. But what I could tell, the message that got through to her was, no, this is when my mom starts getting up in people's business because it's not acceptable. And I was like, it's coming through. She has gotten the message that I want her to get. And it, as annoyed as I was at that moment with what I was dealing with, I was just so happy because it was like, yes, that is what I want you to take away from this, my girl.
Absolutely. Yeah. So listeners, if you're feeling, and I just know this from the work I've done myself and the work that I've done with other women, but if you're feeling some kind of way about your life right now, if you're feeling flat, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you're spinning your wheels, if you're feeling like I was, I should be grateful, but, and then you have this other kind of unrecognized hunger inside you, look at your good girl conditioning. Look at the beliefs that you have. Look at how you talk to yourself, how you keep yourself small, and just be aware of it. Like Lisa said earlier, everybody has their own choices to make in life, and you get to choose how you want to live. But if you're feeling like you want something more, something different, just take a peek. Have the courage to just take a look. Not necessarily need to do anything about it, but at least be aware of places you might be keeping yourself small.
Yes, that.
And other things you can do, go grab Maho Molfino's book.
We'll put that in the show notes. Yep. Check out Karen's blog post. We'll go and link that as well.
Check that out. It's free.
Yeah, and if this is ringing some bells for you and you feel like you have a friend that is kind of questioning this as well, share this episode with them. That's how we build this community, right? That's what we're all here for, is to lift each other up. So tag a friend or send them a message. If you are not part of our pod squad, there'll be links in the show notes, but that makes it super easy to share these episodes with a girlfriend. You can just hit forward. It also has, mic drop, all our show notes, so you don't have to dumpster dive through God knows where to find them, and gives you all these different resources, the books and stuff that we've dropped here. So join the pod squad so you can go ahead and share, leave us a review. The algorithm loves those reviews. And by doing that, you will get us in front of more women that really need this community.
Something super easy that you can also do, because you know I'm a journal freak. You can bust out your journal or even just your notes app on your phone and ask yourself this question. Who could I be if I wasn't worried about approval, fitting in, or being liked? There's no wrong or right answer. Just whatever comes up, just write it down. And just, this is the first step to give you some clarity. And you can just examine what comes up for you. And you can start really taking a peek at, well, what do I believe? And what are my thoughts about this? And how am I keeping myself small? One of the most important things I want you to know, listeners, if any of this is kind of activating you in some kind of a way, I want you to know that you are not alone. Just because other women aren't talking about this doesn't mean they're not feeling it. And like I said earlier, I've had to help every single one of my clients who's come to me for coaching unhook from this kind of good girl conditioning in one way or another, because we've all been raised with it. And for me, that permission to live your best life, to realize you are worthy of whatever it is you want, you'll never be able to have that if you don't at least look at how you are not allowing yourself to kind of go get it. So if you're feeling the hunger for more, or even just something different, but you can't really put your finger on it, I'd be willing to bet it's because of this good girl conditioning that you have on repeat, right? So if you are feeling brave, you want to put your big girl panties on, you can get on a free clarity call with me. It's totally free, no obligation to do anything after. And we can just look at, where is this good girl conditioning and how is it keeping you from the life that you want? And we can riff on different things, and we can come up with a first step for you, something you can do to really take you into the life that you are craving. We will put the link to my calendar in the show notes.
Woohoo! All right, everybody. Thank you, as always, for going on this journey with us. I finished my Coke Zero, so I think that it's time to hang it up now. I'm on to my second drink, so hopefully those adaptogens will calm me down for sleep tonight, but we'll see,
Now get out there and be a bad girl. Cheers.
Cheers!